Corn
podcast.
It has been a minute since we've been together, Rob, and formally welcome to the new podcast titled Can of Corn, the Can of Corn podcast.
Pretty excited about it.
What was your process to come up with the creative name of Can of Corn?
Oh, I threw it in a lot of different directions. Ultimately, a long weekend at Joshua Tree. I think maybe helped the cause. Just you want something nice, you want something good, and I think we finally found that. It's got really ties into baseball, really ties into the roots of Iowa, and so I think it's a huge win, big winner.
I think you've named a few podcasts now. At some point, are you going to jump out of the PBR life and just be somebody who goes around anointing new podcast names?
I have been pretty good at that. Maybe start up a side hustle. Start sending out cold emails offering my services, my creative podcast titling. Jack of all trades. That's what I am. Jack of all trades.
That's Robbie Magic, of course. So we're now here. We've got all three rankings are dropped on the website. If you go to Prep Baseball Report /Iowa, you can find the 24s, 25s, 26s. Right now, we're going to focus on the 24s. Rob, talk a little bit about the big picture of this class.
There's still a lot of really good guys in that class, uncommitted. Right now, I think I kind of go down the list. I think there's 3 uncommitted guys still in our top 25. But those guys have been gobbled up pretty quick. Just had a big commitment. Reese Raggy from North Polk just jumped on board with Kirkwood. So I know every junior college in the state was all over him. I mean, he has a ton of ability. And so that ends up being a huge win for Kirkwood because, he's getting a lot of interest.
So when you look at the top 5, what does that say to you about what the talent? You got Iowa, TCU commits. Like, is this a pretty premier group?
I think with the 24s, they have, at that top end, they have more draft suspect / prospects than any class that I can remember in the near past. Oki's going to get draft consideration, obviously. Blake Larson, Miles Davis, Trevor Baumler, going all the way down to Grout, Brett White, Colin Coonrot, Clayton Bolkema. I could even see Carter Jeffrey getting some draft interest. I know that the one thing I know in over 20 years of experience doing this, I think I've become dumber to the MLB draft and all the moving parts. But there's a lot of guys this year that are going to get some sort of legitimate pro and draft interest going into June and July. So it'll be interesting.
Name a couple of guys that you've seen on this list that you've bumped up a few spots or guys that have just made some pretty good jumps.
When I kind of broke down the rankings, Liam Bender from Iowa City Liberty, he was a big riser for me. Previously, he was in the early 100s. Had some ability, had some arm strength. Still need to put some things together, but I had a chance to watch him a couple times this summer, and then again this fall. I think the big thing with Liam is he started to fill out. He's really athletic. He can really hold it down at shortstop. Premium position, defender. I think if there's anything you have to be concerned about, I think the bat is significantly improved here over the last 6 months, but I'm not quite sure kind of what the ceiling is on it, which I think holds him back a little bit. But I know if I'm a school and I need a shortstop, lock it down defensively, and what I get offensively is icing on the cake. I think there should be a ton of schools pouring in on him, but he jumped he jumped 49 spots in our rankings. I wouldn't say that's unheard of, but I mean that's pretty significant jump. And so Bender's a helium guy. He should be getting a lot of interest. Another guy who's had nothing but success out in Western Iowa is Aiden Shrunk. Um, Kind of blew up last year, led the state in strikeouts, was able to follow back up with that again this year, and put up really good numbers for Sioux City North. Saw him this fall in a tournament. Probably wasn't his best day on the mound, but ultimately you and I were kind of discussing him. Kind of a north-south type arm, high spin rates. He's going to live at your belly button. He's going to throw hard enough that he's going to get balls by you. And then really sharp 12-6 breaking ball to take it in the other direction. You know, he's maybe 5'10", right-handed, but, you know, he has above average stuff. He's going to run it in the upper 80s, and he has a track record of really high success on the field. So I see him as a guy that's going to have a chance to go off the board here relatively soon. But yeah, I really like those two guys.
Yeah, I think with Shrunk, that was watching him in game last tournament in Iowa was that, you know, he just goes right at hitters. Like he didn't seem to have any fear of like, hey, I'm going to nibble here, I'm going to do whatever. He just kind of rears back and throws. He's got the long limbs, and I think he closes a gap between home and the mound too with that. So it was an interesting arm to look at for
Yep.
sure.
Yep.
Do you have any newcomers on the list, or somebody that you know had been in the weeds for a couple of years and just hey, this is somebody who just made incredible strides?
Yeah, I mean, I think in total we had like somewhere between 10 and 15 guys enter the 24 rankings that hadn't been in there previously. Um, but from the Iowa State games, two guys that I really, really liked, Justin Rivera and Justin Potts. I saw Rivera, I don't know, it was probably 2 years ago. Um, Smaller framed kid, athletic, could really run, lacked strength, was pretty raw. And then he kind of jumped back on the scene at the Iowa State games. Still can run, has filled out, athletic. I was really impressed just how he navigated the outfield. I mean, he definitely was covering gap to gap, great reads off the bat, super comfortable out there. I think he's a really interesting guy, and he's from Mason City. And then a guy I'd never heard of or even seen, was kind of a late ad to the event. The head coach at Hempstead gave me a call, said you probably want to drill into Justin Potts. Again, really athletic, multi-sport athlete, higher end football player out of the Dubuque area. But I really liked him. Good bat speed, athletic, can dream on him a little bit, you know, has tools. So I think he's going to be a guy that schools need to probably take a really hard look at.
If you're one of the guys further down on the list, uncommitted, maybe what kind of message do you have for somebody like that going into their senior year here and maybe feeling a little bit of anxiety about not being committed or having the conversations?
I think people need to realize that, you know, there's kind of tiers of recruiting or how schools are going to kind of work down the list. I think recruiting happens at different times for everybody. Um, some guys are going to go early, some tweener, some late. I think one of the good things is, and this kind of sounds sadistic, but I think one of the good things is all these colleges are now fully into their fall programs. They're practicing, they're evaluating the current guys on their roster, how they're developing, if they're improving, if they're coachable, what direction they're going. And, you know, there's a lot of schools that, as an example, there's a lot of schools, say in early September, would be like, I'm not going to touch a catcher with a 10-foot pole. Like we're saturated at that position. It's not a priority. All of a sudden they get to middle, late October. who's the best available catcher on the board. We need to bring in someone right away in that recruiting class. Like, these different parts are happening behind the scenes. Like, I guess the long story short is rosters are always going to fluctuate, and then it's always going to change kind of every school's priority list or needs and wants. And I think patience is a virtue. I think as a player, you need to be proactive on your side. You need to be reaching out to schools of interest, kind of taking care of what you need to take care of, making them readily aware of who you are and what your specific interest is in that school, developing those relationships. And ultimately, I still believe if you're good enough and you have the ability and you have the makeup and all the intangibles, like, guys are going to get what they deserve. They're going to get opportunities to go to college and play baseball. Um, just sometimes it doesn't always happen when you want it to happen. Um, it's going to happen. It's going to happen when it happens. And so stay the course, keep working hard, do what you need to do on your side, and good things will happen.
Yeah, I know more than ever with social media, with Twitter, with Instagram. This time of year, I know all the guys are starting to see everybody else posting their commitments. Commitment season, right? So it can get stressful. So yeah, I think that's a great message. Keep in mind that it's at your pace, and you don't necessarily have to follow the same timeline as everybody else, right?
Yeah, and I think there's obviously everyone. It seems like everyone wants to get recruited early, but that doesn't necessarily mean that there's not going to be bigger and better things the longer you wait it out. There's no such thing as recruiting ever being done. Um, Schools are always looking for guys. Different things happen on their campus. There's going to be that fluctuation in rosters. And I think if you just keep as a player, you keep your head above water and stay relevant and make schools readily aware of who you are, along with what we try to do on our side of things with promotion of guys and everything else. I mean, it'll work out. It might not work out in the time frame that you want it to, but ultimately it will.
And if you're a player or parent listening to this podcast, there's an opportunity here in a couple of weeks to get your data refreshed, get your video refreshed. Right in Iowa, we've got a fall review coming up. What's the date on that one again?
Absolutely, we have the fall review coming up on October 22nd. That always has been a good platform for those unsigned seniors to freshen up some things, some video, their data, whatever it may be, make it more relevant. And some of it's probably dependent on when they attended their last event. Some guys' stuff is somewhat outdated. But I think that's a good opportunity. We'll be at Sports Iowa in Ames, and over the past years we've had a lot of unsigned seniors that have come to that event, and it's been a good platform for them.
Yep, it's a good opportunity to get everything refreshed, get that video refreshed, and hopefully get your recruiting process either started if you're younger or kind of completed as you're older, right?
Absolutely, yeah. It covers all grad classes. So each individual, like, there's going to be a unique reason why they're at that event. A lot of them are going to be in various different points of recruiting. With the younger guys, I think quote unquote exposure takes a little bit of a back seat with the change of the recruiting rules. But you as a baseball player, you need to have that footprint. You need to have that online footprint. You need to have people begin to become readily aware of you. And yeah, but I think for every player to come, there is different positives of what they're trying to accomplish and why it's a beneficial event for them.
Switching gears just a little bit, we got through the first couple weeks of the fall tournament season in Iowa. Of course, you had the limited series 2 weeks ago. Some pretty good teams, pretty good talent. Is there guys that stood out to you throughout the gameplay that might necessarily be on the 24 list, or somebody that is on the list that you're like, hey, that good performances. Really like what that guy brings.
Well, I know ADM's Grant Rakowski pretty much stole the show at the last limited series. Right now, Grant is we have him. He's the 34th ranked player in the class. I think what was really impressive about him is he's a showcase guy and he's a player at the same time. Like he'll go 90 plus from the outfield. He'll run a 6.6, good bat speed, above average exit velos. He can show all those things in a showcase. And then what was impressive is he went out. I think that Sticks team played 4, if not 5 games, and I mean he just tore it up. And I mean, at least that weekend, he was the best player on that team. And that team was loaded with a ton of highly ranked guys and Division I commits. And like he played really, really well over those 3 days. I think something like 7 or 8 hits, multiple extra base hits, driving in runs like crazy. Over that 3-day period, he was a man among boys. He was really good.
He hit a home run to center. I was watching that one where the wind was ripping straight in. The ball, the pitch was at his shins, and I thought, no way this ball gets out. And yeah, that goes to show you both adjustability and power that guy has.
Yeah, and that weekend he was like Vladdy Guerrero. Like the ball could have bounced twice up to the plate, and he still would have squared it up and hit it really hard somewhere. So yeah, he was really good.
I think that's a good reminder that, guys like that, there's showcase and there's gameplay. And I think you need to prove that you're a little bit both. You've got the tools and then you can use them in game as well. Hey, one last question for you. Because I've been driving back and forth from Iowa a ton and they've got the overhead boards on the freeway and, driving safe said something about like, don't tailgate here, tailgate at the big game sort of thing, right? Just made me think, what kind of food would Rob Allison like at a tailgate? What are you going for if you could only have one tailgate food?
Bratwurst. Going with brats.
Bratwurst?
Going with brats.
Okay, what do you do with that puppy?
Other than eat it? What do you mean?
Are you onions, sauerkraut, mustard? What are you loading that thing with?
Yep.
Plain.
Keep it easy. Keep it simple.
Okay. All right.
Brat, little bun, maybe a 7-Up in one hand, brat in the other, feed it in, take it to the house.
You've got your little Smoky out behind your tailgate. You're waiting for the Hawkeyes to soar, and you're just making a whole thing of bratwurst, and that's what you're going with.
Simple.
Okay. All right. That's impressive.
What would yours be?
Colder months. That's chili season, baby. You need to have the chili hot, right? You get the bowl of chili and crush that before you go into the game. So right now, yeah, I don't know. Bratwurst is about as good as
I would argue, though, that sometimes chili will play with your guts. And if you're at like a big tailgate, like the accessibility of restrooms may be sketchy at best. So I think
Yep.
If you're going like full bore into chili, you may be rolling the dice to some degree. So I would have some reservations
the next day,
even though I do like chili.
The next day could definitely be an issue. But yeah, you're right. You always got to plan with caution with whatever you're having, I think. Yeah. Rob Allison, we will talk again. I think we got to hit on the 25s and the 26s. Any other parting thoughts before we go?
No, excited about the new podcast, Can of Corn. Excited about the tournaments we have coming up to round out the fall. Big event in October, which will be the final one of 2023. And then we circle the wagons and we keep pounding away.
This has been the newly minted Can of Corn podcast. We will see you guys soon.
Thanks.
Can Corn podcast.